Devi is of bhakti, and Sita's friends, her close friends, are the bhaktas, the spiritual seekers. And so, when Vivek and Vairagya come together, the bhakti becomes even stronger. That meeting of devotion, bhakti, with Vivek and Vairagya, that is a very powerful combination. It brings so much joy. And that's really what these friends of Sita Devi are hoping for. That they, of course, historically, they were young women, and these are all handsome princes coming. So, of course, people would want to go and see them again and again. But underlying, spiritually looking at it, these friends were these bhaktas, these spiritual seekers. And what attracted them to Rama and Lakshman were these qualities of Viveka and Vairagya. And they wanted the meeting of these with bhakti, because together that will become a wholesome way of going closer to God. And of course, we know eventually they did marry, and then Sita comes to Ayodhya. Now, the way Ayodhya gets described was a really an ideal place. So you could say, in a way, they were in Satya Yuga in some ways. Everything was harmony, peace, wonderful. And then after Sita Devi's coming, it became even more wonderful. Everything was great. Until, of course, we know that if it had been just everything fine and everything great, the story probably wouldn't have been as interesting. So there has to be something, some crisis has to develop. Then that was the formula. Then later on, you'll find in many Bollywood movies also. Everything is good in the beginning, then there is a villain appears and does something terrible, and there is this problem, and in the end, the victory of good over evil. And the villain in the end is destroyed, or the police catch him, and then there is happiness again. And so the villain, so to speak, in Ramayana story is this mantra, who is uh, who's an attendant to Kaikeyi. And so, again, all of you know the story, so I'm not going into all these details, but she is the one who then poisons the mind of Kaikeyi and says, because the custom in those days was the eldest son will be coronated king, and Dashrath is not too innocent either in all of this, as you know, because it was known that the eldest son has to be a king. Everyone loved Rama, all, not only Rama's mother Kausalya, but his two stepmothers, Sumitra and Kaikeyi. They loved him, everyone loved him, and everyone would be happy to see Rama become the king. There was no reason for Dashrath to make it such a sudden thing. He could have announced it, they could have fixed a day, and they could have done it. But Dashrath, without having too much preparation done, he just says, okay, I'm going to. And now there is a backstory to this, as you know. And the story to that was that when Dashrath met Kaikeyi for the first time, and she was very brave, very courageous, very talented, very beautiful. And so, and it was customary in those days for kings to marry as many times, as often as they wanted. So, by that time, Dashrath had already many queens, and of course, definitely Kausalya and Sumitra, the two prominent ones. And so he wanted to marry Kaikeyi, who was much younger than them. And so when he goes to the Kaikeyi's parents and says he wants to marry her, and they have one concern, and that is, they said, well, a daughter will marry you, but our grandson will never be the king, because he'll be the youngest, he'll be the son of the youngest king, the queen, and so he won't be entitled to that. And so when people are in thrall of love, they'll promise anything. And so Dashrath says, oh, I promise you, your daughter's son will be the next. who will succeed me. So he makes that promise, not in front of Kaikeyi. Kaikeyi has no idea about this. It's only with Dashrath and the in-laws. And then, of course, he marries her. And then, of course, there is this one incident where she saves his life in a battle, and he's very pleased and asks her that, ask me any two boons you want. You might remember something similar happened in Kathopanishad when Yama says to Nachiketa. So this seemed to be a feature of those early ancient times. So Dashrath asks her, ask me for any two things. And then that time she says, I have everything, I really don't need anything, maybe we can see later. And so all that Kaikeyi knows is about those two pending boons. Now Dashrath is getting old, he's concerned, and he remembers, he hasn't forgotten the promise he had given to Kaikeyi's mother. And so what he does is sends Bharat, Kaikeyi's son, to his grandparents' place, that is Kaikeyi's parents' place. And then suddenly says, let's have coronation for Rama. The idea is, in case he doesn't know that Kaikeyi doesn't know. So in case Kaikeyi then puts an obstacle in the path, or Bharat comes and says, no, I'm entitled, we don't want to fight inside the family. So he sends him away, and quickly, before any questions were raised, he wants to have this coronation done. And of course, everyone is celebrating, because no one knows this backstory. But Rama, of course, he is Avatar himself, nothing is hidden from him. He knew all this, and he was very troubled, because, again, he is the ideal that he represents. What should he do? He knows his father is breaking a promise, not doing what is right. Now, a 21st century kid will not hesitate to go and tell their parent, this is wrong, you can't do this. And maybe all of you have experienced something like that. But that was not the thing in those days. So Rama knew that his father is breaking a promise, what Dashrath is doing is not right. But what can he do? If Dashrath asked him to be a king, the only two choices before him were either to go and tell Dashrath, you are wrong, you can't do this, or agree to something which was unfair. So either he disobeys Dashrath, or if he obeys, then an injustice is done, and then his father has broken a promise. In the meantime, this mantra, she goes and tells Kaikeyi. So, and he says that, well, if Rama becomes, and then nobody will care for you, you will be ignored, you won't be the Rajmata, so on, and successfully poisons her mind. And then she goes, and it's interesting. She goes, we read in many versions of Ramayana, that she goes and they have a room, Kopagraha, a room meant for anger. And so she goes, and so when Dashratha returns from office, or wherever he has gone for work, when he returns home, he finds Kaikeyi is in that room for anger. Actually, it's actually a good system. Now, not many of us have houses large enough to have each room assigned to different anger and joy and so on. But it's a good idea, because sometimes our perceptions have become so gross that we think that only our physical actions matter. That what I'm thinking in my mind, because it's just I know, and if I just keep it inside and not tell anybody about it, nothing will change. But that's not true. And many of us would have seen this. Sometimes in the family, that if there are tensions, even if there is no verbal fight, even if there is no exchange of words, but just that tension, that anger, even if you are able to control that anger, as long as it is in the heart, and if you're all living under the same roof, you can feel it. And that does spoil the atmosphere at home. On the other hand, and that Swami Vivekananda says in one place, he says, in some days, if you're feeling depressed and negative about it, don't go out that day. Just stay in your room. He said, you have no right to go out and spread this infection into the world. When you think about infection nowadays, you just think, of course, COVID and all the viruses and so on. And that's true, that's infection. But there is also a person filled with negativity and anger and hatred. That's a more dangerous virus, really. And we might see that among the friends that we have, there are certain people we want to spend time with. There are certain people we want to avoid being with. Because if there is too much of anger and hatred and negativity in me, even if I don't speak it out, I carry that kind of a atmosphere around me. And sometimes we see that you spend some time in the company of some people and you feel wonderful, you feel peaceful, you feel joyful. And you spend time in the company of some other people, even if you were peaceful, after spending time with them, you become either miserable or you get angry and you get upset. And so it makes a difference. And that's why, one of the things Sri Ramakrishna taught was, spend the time in solitude now and then. And we might say, how will solitude help? And Ramakrishna primarily meant that, well, you can think of God that time you're in solitude. But even before we can think of God and have some experience of God in solitude, the first experience we have in solitude is meeting our own selves. Because our daily lives have become so crowded, so busy, and now with this phone, kind of a small computer everyone is carrying in their hand all the time, and every now and then picking and looking at it, we might think that it's absolutely essential, but it's good to remember, maybe just 25 years ago, before that, there were no cell phones or anything. Right? So life still went, like people did live fruitful, positive lives, but before the internet and before phones. But so the excuse that, without this life is impossible, is not really true. But granted, but that it is useful, it's a great instrument, useful in many ways, no doubt. But among the negative things it can do, it can help us lose touch with ourselves. Not just the phone, I'm not just blaming just the phone or anything. Even, socializing is great. To meet with your friends, spend time with the family, fine. But if I'm doing that all the time, and other times I'm just surfing the internet or looking at this, I'm never meeting myself. Because all these things are keeping me busy, and I never get that. So Sri Ramakrishna's teaching, go into solitude now and then, is first and foremost an opportunity to meet ourselves. Now, going to solitude doesn't mean I carry my phone and my laptop and my television set and my phone. It doesn't make any sense. Because then I'm not really in solitude. The real solitude would be, switch off your phone, switch off your computers, don't switch on your television, and just be by yourself. I think it's an experiment worth trying if you have not tried it. And see what you feel. Because many people report that if they just switch off all these things and just remain by themselves all alone in a room, they get bored very quickly. If that is our experience, that we get bored when we are just by ourselves, that is quite bad. Because if I'm just by myself, in other words, the only company I have is myself, and I'm bored. What does that mean? That I'm a boring person, that I cannot withstand my own company even for 5 or 10 minutes. And then I want to go and inflict my company on other people and then wonder why they are not enjoying my company. But I'm not enjoying my own company. So if we want that other people should enjoy being in my company, we should first enjoy being in our own company. So when Sri Ramakrishna says, go and spend time in solitude now and then, that gives us an opportunity to find out what kind of a person I am. Am I a fun person to be with or a boring person to be with? And so these things we carry with us, we infect other people with that. And so when Kaikeyi goes into that room, the advantage in that kind of a situation is that if there is anger in the heart, that doesn't get infected every part of the home. It then remains confined to that one room. And then other people in the family know, oh, this person is in this Kopagra, this anger room, so this person is angry. Now, if you know, then you know how to deal with the person who is upset or angry. Then the word you speak and the way you do it differently. And so it's possible to not allow things to escalate as this and kind of quiet everything down. And so that is the helpful part. And think about it this way. Why is it that when we go to a temple, we are standing, so now we are fortunate to be sitting here before the altar. When you go to a temple or mandir, why does the atmosphere there feel different than when you go to your workplace, or you go to a mall? Because as a place, that's a place, this is a place. Why is that place different than this place? And the reason is that when people go to a temple, at least most of the people who go to the temple, at least make an effort to think about God, to think about something holy and sacred. Now those thoughts, they remain in a very subtle way in that space. And so if some other person who is troubled goes into that space, those thoughts help that person. So when I go to a temple, and if I think about God, I'm not only benefiting myself, but I'm leaving some subtle thoughts in the air, and after me, some troubled person might go and get benefited by it. On the contrary, if I go to a sacred place and temple and think something worldly and something terrible and something nasty, of course, I might think it's all things going on in my head. No one knows about it. So first of all, if I do that, I'm hurting myself, but I'm leaving those poisonous thoughts in the air. And maybe some other bhakta comes to meditate there. And that person wants to think of God, but my poisonous thoughts go and trouble that person and doesn't allow that person to meditate. So I have hurt myself and I'm also hurting other people. And that is why this Kopagra idea is good. That's why sometimes, even at home, if someone is upset or angry, don't move about, just remain confined to one room. And let people know in some way, I'm angry, don't come near me right now. Which is also why generally they advise that when you do your daily prayer and meditation, try to do it as far as practicable in the same place. Because then somehow that place, even if it's a one corner of your room, when you have your own family shrine or altar, try to meditate there. Once somebody asked Holy Mother Sharda Devi that, oh, when we pray to Thakur, to Sri Ramakrishna in a picture, is he really there? Or we just have to imagine? And then Mother says that if someone stands before the picture or a murti with deep faith and deep devotion, day after day, then Sri Ramakrishna manifests there in a special form. It may not be possible for us to go to a big mandir every day, but our own little shrine, our own little, even if it's in one corner of a room, if we pray there daily with faith and sincerity, God will manifest in that place. That becomes our Ayodhya. That becomes everything. No need to go all the way to Ayodhya. It's possible to go all the way there and just, I mean, I've heard, I haven't been there after this new temple came. I went when it was still under all this security and all of that. But what I discovered was this, that even people who went there after this new temple was constructed, they said, oh, itna acha hua hai, it's so beautiful, koto bhalo hoyeche. They're describing the greatness, the grandeur, the how much skill and the sculpture and all of that. And then also like, oh, there's so much crowd and we couldn't stand there only for just barely a minute. All that is good, but then what happens? I mean, at the most, if they are lucky, I don't know if they allow photograph there, but then maybe just home and say, and then tell all your friends, I went to Ayodhya, I had darshan there. That's it. And then just, ultimately, what has remained? When I was there, did I even had a moment in that crowd and that noise and that all the other inconveniences of going to a crowded place like that? Even for a moment, I think that I'm standing in the presence of God. Compared to that, so much better. If I have a small picture of Ram at home, I stand before them with full faith, then that becomes Ayodhya. So anyway, so Dashratha goes and then Kausalya says, these are the things, these are my demands, and then Dashratha is devastated, and so on. And then when Rama comes to know about it, Rama sees big relief. Because Ram himself had his own dharma sankata, because should I disobey my father or allow his promise to be broken? And so when this offer was made, that you have to go to the forest, Ram's reaction was, he was very grateful. He said, this is an act of grace. That for a long time, I myself wanted to go and spend time in the quiet of the forest. And through God's grace, this opportunity has come. And then, and my father's also is now forced to keep the promise he had. So what is this character of mantra? What does mantra stand for? And the character of mantra stands for what is called a Veda Buddhi, that the tendency of the mind to divide people, not to unite people. It's love that unites. It's hatred, anger that separates people. There is a very ancient Sanskrit verse. It goes like this: Ayam nijaha paro va iti ganana laghu chetasam udara charitanantu vasudhaiva kutumbakam. Which simply means this: Ayam nijaha, this person belongs to us. Paro va, those don't belong to us. In some ways, the kind of debate going on presently about immigrants, they are not our people, they are from outside. So these are ours, these are not ours. This verse says, Iti ganana laghu chetasam. Laghu is small, cheta is the heart. Small-minded people create these differences, saying that these are our people, those are not. And that Bheda Buddhi, that distinctions, can occur in many different ways. It can occur on the basis of nationality, culture, religion, gender. It can happen on the basis of caste. It can happen on the basis of class. So all these distinctions, and which have been part of human history, what have they produced? They have produced disharmony, disturbance, wars, and mantra stands for that. Things that separate. So this Ayodhya household of Dashrath, which was such a peaceful, harmonious, lovely place, when everyone was happy, this Bhed Buddhi in the form of mantra comes and plants the seed of dissension and separateness.
Maharaj, can I say something?
No, let me finish.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, I think uh, so okay, you can ask. We'll stop here now, and then maybe we can talk more about it tomorrow. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I will disturb you.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
No, I think mantra give us more power, right? Shakti,
Mantra.
mantra.
Okay.
This is my observation.
Mhm.
When I do every day 2 times, I feel good.
You pray to mantra.
Yeah.
Mantra.
Like job, the job.
Mantra.
Mantro,
Oh.
mantro.
Mantra and mantra.
Mantra means what?
Mantra.
Mantra.
The person.
Mantra, the
character.
person, the character.
Her name is
Mantro,
mantra.
that's
It's not
job.
mantra. It's not mantra. It's mantra. The character.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Any other thoughts? Or we can- Yeah.
I was just wondering, like, whenever you say to spend time alone with yourself, like, should you have like a goal when you do that? Like, are you praying to God, or do you just kind of just sit there and see what arises?
Yeah, I mean, even if one is praying to God, when in the beginning we are really meeting ourselves, and only when we have some self-understanding of who we are, a little bit of self-knowledge of who I am, then I will know what I want and who I should pray to, what I should seek. But without having any self-knowledge of who I am as a person, most of us haven't even given thought to what I want in life. What happens is, it's a kind of what they say is a herd complex. In the sense that when you are too little young, of course, there is not, most of us don't think about these things like, why do I go to school? Well, everyone goes to school, so I'm going to school. After some time, why do I be doing this? Well, everyone's doing this, so I'm doing this. Now, it's possible to go through our whole life without questioning anything and just doing things because everyone's doing it. But when we are by ourselves, it gives us a chance to say, let me pause and see, why am I doing the things that I'm doing in my life? Why am I thinking the way I'm thinking? Should I just be doing what everyone does, or do I have any self-determination about which way my life should go? So some kind of a self-understanding about who I am as a person, what I want, and what should I be doing to get what I want is important. Then, only then, the question would be, this is what I want, and who can give it to me? And if then I realize that the things I want, no other person around me is capable of giving me that there has to be some higher being, a higher power who can give me that. And then that higher being will be God. But in order for my seeking, my praying to God to become a meaningful activity, I must first know who I am, what I want, and who can give it to me. So I think going into solitude gives us a chance to figure out these things. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maharaj, when you said have Rama in your heart, whereas we hear from our gurus have Ramakrishna in our heart, is a simple way of looking at it is to be able to feel what Rama would be feeling as if he's living here in the heart.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a big subject. Maybe tomorrow, if you remind me, we can talk a little bit more about it. But the heart, I mean, the heart is, we know it's in this area, it's pretty small, on this size, maybe. Very little place for anybody to be there. It's filled with blood and all that. So where will Rama sit in the heart? Where will God sit in the heart? So clearly, it's not the physical heart. But there is also a heart at the seat of emotions. When people say, I'm speaking with a heavy heart. So it's not an emotional heart either. There is actually a spiritual heart. So in a way, although don't say it publicly, but we possibly say we have three hearts. There's the physical heart, there is the emotional heart. The heart is the seat of emotions, and heart is the seat of the divine, the spiritual heart. Now, when we begin meditating, in the beginning, we're told to meditate in the heart. We close our eyes, everything, just see darkness. That's because we haven't located that heart yet. Sometimes in meditation, people become very emotional and start shedding tears. That's because that emotional heart gets activated. But once when people discover spiritual heart, then they see that it's not just this small. In fact, once we discover it, it's huge. I mean, they find the entire creation can be fit here. And then, of course, it's very possible to see Rama here and everything really. The entire story of Ramayana can be enacted in the heart. But we can talk more about it tomorrow. So, I think we'll stop now. It's getting late.